This is Chrissy.
This is Shirin.
And this is Two Girls Talking Shit.
Each episode will have deep discussion and conversation on topics that matter to us, ranging from wellness to politics.
Of course, with a healthy dose of pettiness, side-eye, and shade.
You ready, Chrissy?
You ready, Shirin?
This is
TGTS. Hey, this is episode 3 of TGTS. This is Chrissy.
This is Shirin.
And today we're talking about body stuff.
But first, Chrissy, what's been up in your life?
Oh my God. We don't have enough time to talk about everything that's been happening in my life, to be honest. However, let's say, so I'm in New York now. If you see, we're here together. So I came to New York. I've been here for like 2.5 weeks now, which doesn't seem like 2.5 weeks. It got off to a rocky start. I won't go into too much detail, but let's just say within 5 days, I sprained my ankle, was on crutches, moved out of the apartment that I had to come here to live in. So it's been an adventure. But what I will say is that if it wasn't for you, Shirin, and some other friends here, I probably would have just went back home. I actually did contemplate going back home several days in a row. So I feel really good to have so much support here, because otherwise, yeah, I think I would have left already. But now that we're like 2.5 weeks in, I'm feeling better about things. Yes. I mean, I still don't have a place to live yet. It's in the works, right? It's in the works. We looked at some places last week. I feel like one of them is going to work out. But I'm feeling pretty good about being here. Yeah.
I think, New York City will always kick you in the butt. Like, no matter how prepared you think you are, no matter how many friends you have here, if you have a place lined up, a job lined up, this city will just like find a way to just like kick you to the curb and make you like work for it.
Yeah.
And I think you experienced that. And also, I just think moving in general is just hard, you know, regardless of your age, regardless of why you're moving. It's hard, but like it's a hard that's necessary. It's the growth you have and the experiences you have from moving that are like so important and huge. But yeah, like moving is difficult, but I think it's just so necessary. And not just like moving apartments, like that's hard enough, but like moving cities, moving towns, moving countries, like it's such it's a growth though. It's a really big growth.
No, it is. And this is my first time living outside of Wisconsin. This is like my first move. This is it.
Look at this Midwest girl.
I know, look at the Midwest girl in the city. So the one thing that did annoy me this week though is the subway. I was just like, I didn't understand that it will say like, oh, it's 5 miles away, like 5 miles at home. That's like, man, 8.5 minutes, I'll be there. And I'm like, why does everything take 45 minutes? So I have to get used to that. But the one thing I do like is that the things are like, everything you need is like here, like, right? So that's a positive. But yeah, it's just getting used to it. I also feel like very resourceful since I've been here. I'm like figuring things out.
Yeah.
You know, I got lost a couple times, but I got through it. So I feel really good. I feel very adult being here. It's a very adult thing.
It's very adult. You very much have to be like scrappy and wise and resourceful here. Yes.
So I've discovered that part of myself, which has been fabulous.
Well, I'm so excited that Chrissy's in New York. It's the best thing ever for me. So I don't care what she thinks.
What's happening in your world? Enough about me.
So I am going to Thailand.
Oh my God, yes.
Next week with my husband.
It's amazing.
I'm really excited. It's somewhere in the world. Like I haven't really explored Asia, Southeast Asia at all. And so I'm really excited to kind of experience that. And yeah, it's interesting because my husband used to live there for a year.
Fun.
And I'm very type A when it comes to travel. Like I want to look at all the books. I want to highlight all the things.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Opposite of me.
Oh my gosh.
We'll figure it out when we get there. Just get a plane ticket. As long as we have a plane ticket, we're good. That's all we need.
I am like the girl who has like all the books. Like I've done Google Docs. Like I'm looking at all like the blogs. But one of the things I'm really working on is, especially with my husband, is like allowing him to do things, you know, and like he knows this country, he knows the places we're going to. And so it's been very weird for me because I'm like, I'm not staying up online trying to research stuff. Yeah. I've researched a little bit. Don't tell Raj. But he knows me, but it's just like, yeah, just being like, all right, you take me and you show me the things and yeah, so I'm excited, but I have like no idea. Like the other day he's like, he's like, maybe we should get vaccines. And I'm like, I don't know. We don't need to get vaccines, but we checked, but I was like, but usually I would be like checking all that? Like, yeah.
Yeah, I'm the opposite. I'm like, you know what? As long as I have a plane ticket, I'm gonna figure the rest out. And actually, last year we went to South America. Didn't even think of vaccines till like someone mentioned it to me randomly like a week before we're leaving. I'm like, oh, is that a thing we need? And I did need vaccines. So I like had to rush and get them. So that's me. I'm on the opposite spectrum. Yeah. Recently, I went to Puerto Rico with Shannon, Shannon, and we both got our plane tickets, and it literally was like 10 days before we were leaving, and we were like, oh my God, we never found a place to stay. So, yeah, I'm a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, everything will, pan out the way it's supposed to. Yeah. You figure it out, like, especially now in the day and age of like internet and stuff on your phone. Like, I remember I used to travel, like, what was 6 years ago?
Yeah.
And you would like land and you would have to like call places or like go to like an internet cafe. Do you remember those? And I know they're still around, right, but you go to an internet cafe to find like the next place you're going to stay. Now it's like, now you can literally book your travel like on the plane.
On the plane. Absolutely.
The future.
Yeah, the future, right?
Yeah.
So, but that's cool that Raj has been there before, though. Yeah. So, like, that'll be fun. So, it's exciting.
Super excited. It's going to be like a great couple trip.
I will be internet stalking you and having all the FOMO. So,
thanks.
Yeah.
I'm excited. Okay.
You good.
So, today we're talking about body stuff. And we kind of struggled with trying to give a title to this because we didn't want to call it like body confidence, body positivity, body image. It just none of that. Like we're just gonna call it body stuff.
Body stuff.
And just get into like our relationship with our bodies. Because it is a relationship, one that is constantly changing and evolving and growing. And I want to start with you, but what as like a kid, like I think that's kind of where we kind of get most of our ideas around what our body's supposed to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
What was your relationship like with your body as a young girl or in your family?
Yeah. So, for you, those of you who don't know, I'm 5'11", so I'm very tall, and I've always been really tall. I was like 5'8" in like the 3rd grade, which is egregious. Tall. That's my new word of the week. Egregious.
If anyone listening or watching, every time Chrissy says egregious, it's like a drinking game.
It's a drinking game, basically.
Take a shot.
Yeah,
take a shot.
So, but honestly, being tall never really bothered me.
Yeah.
And I never, I went to a very small, I was homeschooled for a while. That's a whole other story for another day.
Explains so much.
And then I went to this very small, Christian school. There was 20 kids in my class. So I never really had, got teased. The only people that made fun of me for my height were, my brother and sister. They used to call me Jolly Green Giant. I know.
But siblings are the worst.
I know, right? Yeah. But it really did bother me. I never had a problem being tall. I was just that's just how I am. It's all good. But I do remember at a young age feeling uncomfortable. I don't know, I must have been 10 or 11 or maybe 12. I feel I had a little pudgy stomach, and I noticed it. And then I don't think anybody ever really said anything to me necessarily that I remember anyways, who knows. But I remember wearing baggy t-shirts and then intentionally hunching my shoulders over so that it would try to cover my stomach or whatever. Which was that was a weird phase. But then I got taller. And so then I kind of just leaned out a little bit. But when I was in high school, I gained, I would say probably 20, 30 pounds in a year time frame, which is pretty noticeable, I think. And it was just a lot happening in life. My parents got divorced. There's a lot of things going on in my life. And I noticed that I gained weight, but it also didn't really bother me until this boy, he commented it at school. He made this comment in front of people oh, I can tell you've been eating good.
Oh.
I know. Yeah, so that made me feel so embarrassed about my weight. And so I was oh my God, I need to lose weight, obviously. It's a problem. So I went on an Atkins diet, which I think is maybe equivalent to what the keto diet is now.
Right.
No carbs, the moral of the story. And I drove myself to the bookstore and got a book about it because I heard my mom's friend say that she was on it. Yeah, so I did that. And then I lost 30 or 40 pounds relatively quickly within a couple of months. And then it was just everyone was oh my God, you look so great. How did you lose weight? And so that for me was just a pivotal moment because then I was just oh, I need to always stay skinny, right? That's the ideal body to have. And that's why I'll get validation from people. And so that was just kind of the start of a period of yo-yo dieting for me.
And what age were you there?
I was 16 or 17.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I was a junior in high school.
So the first diet that you went on was
that was my first diet. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's funny how a lot of our ideas of what health or diets are come from these random places. My mom's friend was talking about this particular diet, and you're that sounds Great.
What we do.
I love how you have to get a book about it. Because
Yeah.
now you just like Google.
I know, right? Again, back to these things, right? I like literally went to the bookstore and got a book about it and like read it and like followed. I carried the book with me like so I could just like know.
Can I eat this?
Can I eat this? Let me reference my book.
Is there an app for that?
Yes,
no.
right?
And what is, well, I was going to ask, so
Yeah.
I think one of the things that's so insidious about like weight loss, right, is how did the people in your life react to that transformation, that change to you?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. People were like, oh my God, you look so great. Which again, you know, and we can get into this later in this conversation, but one thing like in the fitness world that I always talk about is like not commenting on people's body change, fat loss, or anything like that. I know people like have good intentions of being like, oh my God, you look so good. But two things. Number one, we don't know what's happening with the person they lost. Like I've had periods where I've lost weight because I was like fat and didn't have an appetite, or people are sick, or all kinds of things. So you can't look at someone's body and know what's going on. And so commenting on it is just offensive, I think. Yeah. Secondly, it just continues to reinforce this idea that like if you're telling someone, oh my God, you lost weight and now you look so great, did you like not look great before? Right. And this just ties into the idea that we have in society that being in a smaller body equals being healthier or looking better, or it's like the idea that we should all be chasing or trying to maintain this like certain size, which ultimately just leads us to like obsessing about everything that we're eating, obsessing about every time we gain weight or our clothes are fitting too tight. So I think it's so important, like for all of us to really be conscious about like just not commenting on people's bodies, because also like, why is that even necessary? You know?
So my relationship, so I'm Middle Eastern, I'm from Iran, and I was always overweight, like I hate that term, overweight. Like I was a chubby kid. And but like within my community, like I was very much like a minority, like that this body size, the body shape I had was very different. Actually, many things about me are very different, like my hair, like just a lot of things. But so I always felt like an outsider. And when I think it's like when you start going to school, right? And you start seeing like other kids and what they look like, and so for me, like I grew up in a household where nobody ever shamed me for anything. But I think my mom had this heightened awareness of like my size. And so I know that she shifted how we ate in the house. And it was never like stated explicitly. But like, I kind of knew, I'm like, oh, like things are different because of me. Right. And it was just always this like this focus and this lens on my weight. And I wasn't really an athletic kid. Like I really didn't love moving. I was very artistic. So like I sang, I was in theater. I was like on every team, but that's because I just was like also an overachieving, like first generation immigrant. Like I was on basketball, volleyball, like there was
all the teams?
I was on all the teams, like even the track and field, but like, it's just, that was from my like overachieving. Like it was not because I, love to move. So like my relationship with movement was weird because it was very competitive. And I didn't feel like I belonged there because of my body size and my skills and ability. I'm using air quotes, right? And also gym, I think is such a messed up, like just any physical education in schools, because it's so standardized. And like, I'm sure like in Canada, like we had to do like a 6-lap run. I don't know how much that was, but like,
sounds like a lot.
Right. It was a lot. And you had like a time, like you had a time you had to finish it in. And like, I physically could not do that. Right. So you're this like outcast, and you look at gym as this thing, like physical movement is this thing that's like, you totally dread it. Right. So like, that was like one thing that I'm like, really like, I feel like needs to change within the system is like movement is amazing. But movement is very personal. And I don't, like, I just feel like making kids do certain things makes them not like to move, right? Because they're like, well,
it's embarrassing.
It's embarrassing, right?
Absolutely.
So there was that factor, and then just the food factor, which like we ate Iranian food, which is really delicious food. But again, this conversation is happening right now in the world of like diet culture. It's rice heavy, right? Which is like, ooh, bad carbs, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, it was just like, can I eat this? Am I allowed to eat this food that's like my culture's food? So I went through elementary school and then high school, and I gained weight, because again, I didn't like movement, and I was like an overachiever. I spent all my time studying, and I was quite large by the time I finished high school. And for me, I don't even think I tried to diet because I was like, that's just so, I just can't do it. Like can't do it. And then I got to college, and I remember there was like 2 experiences that really were like oh crap, this is, I have to do something.
Yeah.
One was we went to this, like, there used to be this disco night in Vancouver where I grew up, and you had to wear clothing, like disco clothing. And I couldn't find anything my size, right? Because like, this was like back in the day.
Yeah.
And so I went, and I wasn't let in because I didn't have an outfit. Oh. And all my friends were like, oh my God, no, let me. And I was like, no, it's fine. And
so you didn't go?
I didn't go in the end. And then there was another instance where some of my girlfriends were going somewhere like tropical, and I didn't feel comfortable, right? But this was like all me. It wasn't the weight that was holding me back. It was me, because I felt like I didn't belong in those spaces, or I couldn't be free in those spaces. And so I didn't go on that tropical vacation, and it was just like, so then I went vegetarian, and I started exercising and running, and
was like after like this experience with the trip, those 2 things.
Yeah, it was those things. So I was like in my early 20s at this point. And then I started losing the weight. And yeah, it's just like, it's a total, like, it messes up with your mind, right? Because you get all of this positive affirmation about like, good job, like, whoa, and like, here you are, like, here I am, this girl I got a full scholarship to college. I actually was getting almost paid to go to college. I was like this incredible singer, and like the compliments that I wanted the most were about my body. Yeah. Right? Like, and those, that's just kind of like, and then I feel like you become fixated with kind of getting more of that. And so then you start getting the validation, like, I have to keep this. Yeah. So I think that's kind of my initial experiences with all of that.
Yeah. One thing you said that I think is so interesting too is about the food piece, right? And like your culture, Iranian food being like rice heavy. And like, I think one thing too that happens like in the midst of like this body and diet, nutrition and all that stuff, diet culture, is that like this advice that like, certain things are like bad foods, like rice, or you should eat that or whatever, without any like consideration of like cultural context, right? And like, how does that, like, how would that make someone that's Iranian feel if you're like, oh my God, don't eat rice, that's so bad. You're like, oh my God, I can't eat my food, the food that I eat. Like, I just can't eat it anymore, right?
It's so funny. I was just in Mexico City last year, and I became friends with some people, and we were talking, and this guy had lost a lot of weight. And my mind was like, whoa, that must be so hard to lose weight in Mexico, because like all these like the foods and blah, blah, blah. And then I didn't say anything, and then he looked at me and he's like, yeah, it must be really hard to lose weight in the US because all the heavy food.
Interesting.
And I was like, whoa, it's like our perception of other people's like diets and their culture and the way that they eat is so skewed, right? Yeah. I was like, yeah, you're right. Like, yeah,
absolutely.
So anyways, that like blew my mind. But yeah, the culture piece is a big part of it, that I think a lot of us end up like not eating the foods of our cultures, or like totally like shaming our food, right? Which is like a big part. Like again, what's really crappy about diet culture is it's vilified food, which is actually, it can be a source of nourishment and comfort and home.
Absolutely.
Like food can be those things.
And when I think of like food, like part of that is just like experiences, right? And so, I mean, one thing that I think we should touch on is just like this idea of like restricting, ourselves from certain things because we're like, oh, we can't eat this, we shouldn't do this. But like, how does that affect the experiences that we can and can't have in life, right? And also like, how much mental energy do we spend on like, oh my God, I'm out with friends, but I shouldn't eat this thing, right? And or like, we could just like enjoy the moment and have fun without this guilt and shame attached to what we're eating. And if we should be eating that.
I want to get into this because, and I think we will, but I want to hear about, right? Because you and I have both lost weight, gained weight, like, but you know, to like going out in the world, our size falls within like a standard. I'm using air quotes again, right? So what has shifted for you, right, when it comes to your relationship with your body, its appearance, whatever, judgment? What has shifted for you? Because I know you have gone through huge shifts.
So all right, so then I like we talked about my like yo-yo dieting phase, whatever. Eventually obviously gained weight back because I was doing things that were very unsustainable. In addition to like eating no carbs, I was like also doing like, so much ridiculous amounts of cardio, things that just like weren't sustainable. So gained some weight back and then wanted to lose weight again, and eventually started strength training, powerlifting. And so that even is a complicated time because I found strength and that was like really empowering to me. At the same time, I also had a trainer who, when I came to her, I told her I wanted to lose weight. That was my goal when I started strength training. And I wasn't even really trying to strength train. I just hired a trainer and she was like, no, we're going to strength train. And I ended up loving it. But at the same time, she was like giving me like 1,000-calorie diet.
What?
Oh my God. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Like
You're like 5'11". First of all, no one should be.
Nobody should be eating 1,000 calories a day.
But like that is ridiculous.
You know what babies are supposed to eat. Like children are supposed to eat 1,000 calories a day, right?
Oh my gosh.
So, but she did tell me like she was like a jumpstart diet. So I was only supposed to do it for like 3 or 4 weeks. But like when you give somebody, it's still too long.
First of all, never.
Nobody ever should do that, right? But she gave it to me, and like of course, like in 3 or 4 weeks, I saw like I lost a lot of weight. So then I didn't stop. Like I just kept doing it. For like months, and I didn't tell her I was still doing it. I was just like, whatever. And I was also doing all this cardio outside of our sessions. It was just like obsessive, right? So anyway, long story short, I did lose a lot of weight. I started eating more, but still was like having this really tricky relationship with food. So at this time, it was like the big thing to do, like if it fits your macros, which is just like macro counting, right? So I hired a coach online and started counting macros, and I will honestly say like counting macros is very effective. But it still was like a source of like something else to obsess about, right? Yes. Like I can't eat side of my macros, even though I was eating much more and I was eating a level that was sustainable to like live. It was still like very obsessive that like I couldn't eat anything else, right? Right. And like I couldn't go over my macros, or I feel like guilty about it. Right.
Or you go out into the real world and you're like,
I don't know
like
what to eat.
What is this? Yeah.
So I avoided, right? Like I avoided going out to dinner with friends. Right. I avoided going anywhere. I remember I went on like this family trip for the weekends. I packed all my food in Tupperware containers for the weekends, because I was so worried about like not being able to track my macros perfectly while I was there. It was so bad that I took like food into a restaurant. Like my family was like eating out. I took a Tupperware container.
No.
And I was going to stay in the car and eat it. And they were like, oh, that's so sad. So they asked the restaurant if I could bring my own food in. And so I went in and ate my own little sad little food. I mean, it was like okay food, but also it was just like a sad little meal.
Right.
I was like enjoying this lovely meal. And that was also just really sad. So I think it was like that. And also I was like the leanest I had been as an adult, but I was still like, oh my God, I just need to lose like a few more pounds.
Right.
A few more pounds and it'll be it. And to the point that my family was even like, are you an issue?
Right.
Because they're like, you're really, and even now when I look back at those pictures, I was like, wow, I was pretty small then.
Yeah.
But in my mind at that time,
right.
Like,
that's not how you see it.
I did not see myself that way at all. But anyway, eventually I just got like sick of my own shit, because I was just like, I got really tired of like missing out on things, not doing things. So I eventually was just like, okay, I'm just gonna stop counting macros. Right. Cold turkey, which was really hard, because like it was hard and it was not, because when you've been cracking macros for a long time, you still have an idea of what you're eating, right? Yes. You're mentally tracking.
You're tracking it in your head.
Mentally tracking it in your head.
Yes.
So I was doing that for a long time, but then eventually like I was able to like loosen the reins and start eating like normally again, which is great. I mean, did I gain weight? The answer is absolutely yes. But what I realized on the other side of that is like, yes, I gained weight, but like also it's fine, right? Yeah. Like I'm healthy, I'm strong, like I feel great, I'm enjoying life and experiences. And yes, my body is bigger than it was, but like, why does my body need to be that small?
Right.
But I will be honest and say that there are still times when I wake up and like I have these thoughts of like, oh, like is my body, you know, I think we all have those moments. And I think that's the thing that we don't necessarily talk about as much about the relationship with the bodies, that it's always changing.
Yes.
And so like generally 90% of the time I feel great with my body, but then there's 10% of the time I'm like, oh, I don't like how this looks, or oh, like, you know these things about you just like see your body, like the shape of it is a little bit different than it used to be. And you're like, oh my God, is this okay? Or do I like it? And I think it's less about what other people think for me now, but it's more about like, am I okay with it? But even in that, I know that that's a part of the conditioning, right?
Right.
Like, why do I think that there's something wrong with my hips being a little bit wider than they used to be, right?
Yeah.
That's like not my own beliefs.
Yeah.
Those are the beliefs. So it's like this constant process of like questioning what I think and why I think it, and like releasing those beliefs that don't belong to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's one of the biggest things when it comes to our bodies is like our perception of our body is not really our own, right? Like who has told us that like soft bellies are not okay?
Right.
Like why are big thighs with cellulite not okay? Like why is a skinny frame like not, like it's just like all of these things are told to us, right? And
Absolutely.
there's this really old school book that I'm reading. There's a lot of really great books on this topic, but this one's old school. It's from 95 and it's called When Women Stop Hating Their Bodies. It's very old school.
Yeah.
But there's some really good ideas in it. But like one of the ones that there's some ideas that have really like stood out to me. But like the first question was like, who told you that a soft belly isn't okay?
Right. Yeah.
Right. And you're like, oh yeah, like why like when I look in the mirror and I see this and I like don't like it.
Right.
Why don't I like why don't I like that part of me?
Yeah.
But also it's really interesting in that book they were like, oh yeah, you're probably fixating on like your boobs, your hips, and your stomach. And I was like, oh, if this book was written now, it would have butt.
Right.
But it's just showing how like in 20 years, it's like they're messing up with us. Like that's like that they have us fixated on this thing because it just keeps us busy. I mean, the whole complex is, I mean, we can get into that.
Right.
We don't have to, but it just gets us fixated on things to fix. And it seems like, I think the thing with body is that there is kind of a formula to it, right? It's a messed up formula.
Yeah.
But like there isn't much of a formula to anything else in our lives, right? Like finding a partner, landing your dream job, finding like whatever. But when it comes to our bodies, there is kind of a formula.
And you can like fix it.
And so I think like that's what we latch onto that because we're like, oh, okay, I can just do these things and my life will be okay, or I will be happy, or I will be accepted.
Right.
And like it isn't those things.
No.
But that's what they fed us, that like, here's the formula, you do it, you're gonna have a great life.
Absolutely. And on that note too, I think for me personally at least, I know that I felt like when like I felt like everything else was out of control in my life. Yeah. I've had the urge to go back to like, I'm just
counting macros
or like, macros, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
it's like now I can control this thing.
Yes.
Right? I can't control everything else, but this I can control. And so I think you're absolutely right. And I think on the conversation of like butts or whatever, right? Because when it comes to like body stuff, it's not just about like shrinking our body, right? Like that's one part of it.
Right.
But it's also like having the right shape. Like, do you have a big enough butt? Like all these things. And we see now, like, and I'm all for people's body autonomy, right? So do whatever it is that you want to do with your body. So there's no judgment for people who get plastic surgery. Like, do what you want to do with your body, right? I mean, I think for me, the question is always like, why do I want to do this, right?
Mm-hmm.
That always has to be the question for everything. If you want to lose weight, if you want to change something, it's always like, why do I want to do this?
Yes.
But we see like this obsession with like having the perfect body, having the perfect shape, right? We look at like Instagram models, like they all have the same bodies, right?
Right.
And this obsession to always have this perfect thing. And like you said, in 15, 20 years, like that's going to be something different. It's always changing.
It's going to be totally different.
Right.
We're chasing something that's like not even,
it's not
like, it's not even our dream.
No.
Right. It's not our dream.
And also like, I think this is again, like part of this bigger conversation is like this is just like part of patriarchy, right?
Yeah.
Because like the longer we're obsessing about our bodies and what we look like or having the perfect whatever, like we're so distracted from doing other things, even from just enjoying life.
Yeah.
And we've had this conversation, right? Like I know that I've gained weight over the last, and I actually just talked about this recently. I know I've gained weight over the last year, but also I've had like a really lot of great experiences over the last year, right?
Yeah. Wait, I love how you said that because a lot of the times this conversation goes, oh, I know I've gained a lot of the weight over the past year, but I've had a really tough year.
Right.
Oh, like I've, and it's like that thing of like,
yeah.
that like I've had to let go because like this fell apart and that, but actually no, like I'm the same way. I've gained some weight over the past year. And I've had the most incredible year of my life.
Right?
And I think that's the story that we need to shift.
Yes, absolutely. You're right.
You
just hit the nail on the head.
Oh my God.
Right,
I literally,
you just solved it, right?
Because I thought you were going to say, I've had a really tough year. And you were like, I had a great year. And I was like, oh my gosh, but that's the story we as women keep saying. Oh, I just gained weight
because I had this happen. So that's why this happened. Like, because that also
this is a reflection of my bad life.
Year. This is part of my bad year.
Oh.
Also, like, no, I had a lot of really great things happen this year. And there were some like not great things too. But but like when I look over the last year, I'm like, I had great experiences. I traveled. I went places. Like I hang out with friends. Like I enjoyed all those moments. Yeah. Right. Like I ate good food without like stressing about it.
Yeah.
I was in the moment and present. Like. Those are the things that I want to create more of. Yeah. And again, I think this idea that like, yes, if I gain weight, that means things are going bad in my life. Right. It's just like another lie that we tell ourselves, right?
Oof. Yeah. That's huge. Yeah. So I, over like the past, like.
Tell us about your year. Cause you have like a really
I've had an amazing year. I've had an amazing year, right? Like my husband and I we got engaged in November, got married in January. It was like 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And then I've transitioned careers into fully becoming a coach.
Yeah.
And it's just been a lot of really amazing things. And, you know, I'm my biggest aha moment. So again, like my history with my body, one of the greatest gifts was actually moving to New York. When I moved to New York and I saw all the diversity and bodies and like how people showed up for themselves and how they like expressed themselves was one of the most liberating things. It was the first place I actually felt attractive because I was like so many others. Like I don't know if a lot of our listeners are living in a city, like my city, Vancouver, is very homogenous. People, like that's where Lululemon started,
I didn't know that.
right? Like that's, I don't need to like say anything
Say
else,
more.
right? that is the ideal body type. And actually most of the women kind of try to fit themselves into that. Okay.
Yeah.
And I certainly did not.
Yeah.
And so moving here was really wonderful. But of course, you know, you're in your 20s, you fall into that trap of like, oh, what if I just lost a little bit more, lost a little bit more. And for me, it was like, when I started counting macros was like, then I had another whatever. But of course, macros, yes, it is an effective way, but it's also obsession. It also takes away all of your trust and intuitiveness when it comes like you don't even know. Like you're like hunger, like what is hunger? Like,
what does that even mean?
Can I eat right now? No, because I want to have ice cream later.
So I gotta save all my macros.
So I gotta save all my macros,
100%.
right? So messed up.
Yeah.
So
but
you
sold as like this flexible
thing. Right. You can eat ice cream, but you're gonna be eating egg whites all day long.
So you can save all your carbs and fats for ice cream.
Right. So it's like, so I got caught on that train and it's, you know, it did its thing. And then, you know, this year with my husband, we've really gotten into cooking. It's one of the things we really, really love. And we got Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat, the cookbook. It's such a great cookbook. And the show is amazing. You should definitely watch it. Oh, I'm going to get into that too a little bit later. Yeah. Remind me of that. But, so there's this great focaccia recipe and it like requires like so much olive oil. Like it's just a buttload of olive oil in there. And we made this beautiful focaccia bread. And we started eating it and I started dipping it in the olive oil. And I thought to myself, when was the last time I allowed myself to have olive oil like this?
Yeah.
Like without measuring it on a scale and being like, oh, 6 grams, stop. You know, like that. Then you go a little bit over and you're like, you're trying to like take it off the lettuce. And you're like, okay, that's like 6 grams. Okay, it's not 7, right? And so it just really made me realize like how I am denying myself the pleasure of like living and of existence, and food is pleasure, right? It's pleasure and it's allowed to be pleasurable and you're allowed to do that, right? And so it's been a lot of aha moments. And again, coming back to that gaining weight piece, I was listening to a podcast and this woman was talking about the fact she had gained some weight but it was the best year of her life. Yeah. And she was like, I was reflecting back on this and I thought to myself, I can either see this year as the year that I gained 20 pounds or the year that I had so much financial success. Me and my family were like so close together. We traveled. And she was like, yeah, I'm not going to make it the year that I gain weight. And like, that is the thing though. We make things like, oh, that was the year that I looked my best. Yeah. That was the 100%. Year that I gained all that. And it's like, we need to stop making our weight some sort of signifier, a landmark, a benchmark, a bookmark, whatever it is. Absolutely. In our lives, our bodies are supposed to change. Absolutely. Like that's natural. That right? But that's we talked about this in one of our episodes where we said the only constant is like our body's changing. Like we were talking about aging, right? Aging, yes, absolutely. And so the only constant is that your body's going to change. 100%. You're going to go through different phases and your body will reflect those phases. Absolutely. It's just, and I think too, like priorities in life change, right? Yeah. Like there was a time when I was going to the gym like 5 days a week. And then there's times in my life where I'm not now. I haven't gone to the gym in 2 weeks. Right. Like that's life. And the idea that like everything is going to be constant and they're going to be able to maintain the same body for the rest of our lives. It just doesn't, it's just not realistic. And what are you, like the question for me, like when I ask myself, like, I've gained weight, like that is that's a neutral, I've gained weight. Yeah. But like, it's the meaning I'm attaching to that. Right. Right. So it's like, I've gained weight, which means I have no self-control. Right. I have no sense of like, whatever that is. And I think that's the question. That's the phrase we really need to answer. Like I have gain weight, which means that. Right. Which means the what. And also I think that's part of like this unlearning, right, of things, because I think society tells us, right, that if you're
overweight, which again, that word, but like that you're lazy or that you're undisciplined, right? Or that like that speaks something about your character. And that's just not true.
Yes.
Like, it's just not true at all. And like, here's the other thing. Like, I know people, I'm sure you've known people that are in very small bodies or whatever, that are very quote unquote unhealthy, right? I mean, I know I've had like people in the fitness industry who like weren't getting their period because their body fat was too low, right?
Gosh.
So like the fact, like, your body is not a signifier for your health or your worth or like how disciplined you are, or how worthy you are. Like, none of those things are true. And again, I think it's just this constant process of unlearning the things that we've been told, and also that we continue on. That's what makes it hard, right? Because we're still getting these messages all the time that there's some like meaning to those things.
Yes. I mean, there's so much that we can talk about this topic, right? And we do have body privilege.
Of course. Oh, yeah.
Right? Regardless, like, we really need to acknowledge that we have body privilege, and that like we are not going to be like withheld of opportunities and resources and like whatever in this world because of how we appear. And that is the world that we live in. Like, there is that fear, you know, and I think that's when I was younger and larger, I experienced that, right? And I tried with all of my might to be the smartest, to be the most funny, because my body did not fit those ideals. So I knew that because of my body, I would not gain access to certain things, but I was going to compensate for it, right? And so I think that is something that we really have to like acknowledge and know, is that we live in a messed up society that also like makes it actually kind of vital for us to be quote unquote small or within the standard and the norm. Yeah.
So I'm actually so glad you brought that up, because that's a very important conversation that like, yes, we can say we've gained weight, but like it's not really hurting us. Like, we still live in bodies that people aren't. We can go take a flight easily. We don't, like you said, we're not like missing opportunities because of our bodies. So like, it's very important to acknowledge that. And also like really important, I think, to acknowledge that, because like you said, we live in this mess of society, right? That these things, even though it's like so messed up in some regards, there is like real consequences for people who live in larger bodies. That if you're struggling with like wanting to be smaller or wanting to lose weight, like there's also no shame about that, right? And so I think we get into this like place of like, if you just loved yourself, you wouldn't care about whatever, but that's just not true, because there are like real things and like systematic issues in place that if you have a desire to lose weight, even if you're not in a body that's like discriminated against, I get it, right? Like, there's so much messaging around this that like there's just like never any reason to feel shame about like wanting to go on a diet or wanting to lose weight, even if you can acknowledge that like, you know, maybe the reasons for it are like messed up, like it's okay, right? Like, there's no reason to feel guilt or shame about that. But before we go, I do want you're going to bring up something about the book.
You know, I will, but I was going to say that I think the underlying like whatever that what are we talking about is that like that health is not related to size.
Absolutely.
Right. So for whatever reason, if you decide to do whatever with your body, like and we know this health at every size, like when we're talking about being healthy, we're not talking about being thin.
No.
And I think that's really what's out there in the world, right?
Absolutely. There's this idea that like if you lose weight, you're automatically a healthier person. If you gain weight, you're not healthy. You hear this all the time, right? Like, I don't care what size they are. I just want them to be healthy. Right.
No.
Like that's like fat phobic right there.
Right. Like actually someone I know, she was like, yeah, I love Lizzo, but I'm just really worried about her health. I'm like, do you know
her
health?
And which is also,
are you at her doctor's appointment, like with her blood levels? Like,
and again, this goes back to the same idea that like if you're in a larger body, that means something,
right?
Or because again, no one makes comments about
like
people
no one's thinking about Lady Gaga, like her health could be
about her health,
right?
Nobody says that.
I'm sorry, did you see that documentary on Lady Gaga?
I did not.
Homegirl's got like her body's falling apart,
but nobody's
talking about her health because she's skinny as fuck.
But that's true, right?
Anyway,
I didn't have to watch the documentary, but that's a very valid point. Nobody is asking.
Nobody's asking about,
and she really needs. So we probably need to be concerned about her health.
Like for instance, like J-Lo and A-Rod went on like a restriction diet earlier. Like that, to me, that's not healthy.
No,
you know what I'm saying? So our perception of what health is so skewed, and it's Anyway,
and same thing too. Like on that same note about like. You never hear people make comments about what people are eating when they're in smaller bodies. Like, I just don't want them to eat that, not because of their size.
Right.
Because I'm worried about their health. Oh, garbage.
Trash.
Nobody ever says that. Never heard somebody say that about a person in a small body.
Trash.
As a matter of fact, I feel like people are like, oh my God, you're so lucky you can eat all that food. They never say like, this might not be good for you. Nobody says that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. No, so actually, so what I was going to say, it's related to this. So Salt That Acid Heat, the woman who wrote it, Samin Nosrat, she's also Ronnie, and yay. But watching that show, I was like, why am I so happy? Right. I was like transfixed. I was so happy. And then I hit it. If you watch the show, she is a woman who is very average looking. And I'm not saying that in a mean way.
Yeah.
She looks like a normal human being, right? Like most of the women we see on TV, the ones eating food are either super skinny and super hot.
Yep, absolutely.
Right?
100%.
Super skinny. And then there's like maybe the barefoot Contessa, but she's like your mom. You know, like that's like, she's not an aspirational figure.
Right.
Or someone who's like underneath the age of 40 or something, right? And here she is, this woman eating food, asking for seconds and thirds, and thoroughly taking pleasure in food, like a male announcer would, right? Like one of those very large, like, I don't know, like Andrew Zimmerman or whatever's on TV. I don't watch much TV, but like, I was like, oh my gosh, we do not have the pleasure of watching a normal woman enjoying food and asking for more food and not being like ridiculed or made fun of or questioned. Like or
even like guessing, like, oh, I shouldn't ask
oh, I shouldn't. Oh, I'm being so bad. I'm being so bad right now.
Yeah.
No, like she's like, give me some of that gelato. I want some of that. And she's like laughing and eating. And it was so liberating to see, because that is like like when it comes to pleasure, whatever your pleasure is, as long as it's not doing you harm, like, you know, whatever. But it's like, we need to take more pleasure in food, in our lives,
in our lives,
whatever that is.
Whatever that is. And I think that's so beautiful because, and again, like, I think you're hitting on something really important, that like when we see men portrayed, it's like, that's never the conversation, right? Like, it's never like men being like, oh my God, I should not have seconds, right? Like, that's very much something that I think like has been so perpetuated for women, right? That we should only be eating like why is people like salad things, right? Like people always eating salad and like laughing, right? There's nothing that fun about that salad, right? And so I think I love that, like just enjoying and having taking pleasure in food and being like, and also I think especially within the fitness space, it's been such a like the idea of like food being pleasurable has been like kind of demonized. Like, people like to not say it like that, but like
it's like food is fuel.
Yeah,
I feel like that's what it is.
Right?
It's like food is fuel. Not
that's
one of the things it could be.
But like it could be like so much more.
Yeah,
and there's like nothing wrong with it. Actually, like it should be so much more than just fuel, right?
Yes.
So, I love that. That's amazing.
Yeah. So watch Salt That Acid Heat. It's a great show about cooking, but also just like it's really liberating. And like Netflix hounded this woman down, and they said to her, you know, when they asked her to do it, she was like, I was really surprised because like she's like, do they want me to change? And I'm like, we don't want you to change anything about you.
That's so beautiful.
Like, and she was like, when someone would come sometimes to like maybe like fix her hair or like, and there would be people who would like be like, no, like don't touch her. Like they really wanted her to just be her, which is really, really wonderful to see that on TV.
Well,
because
we need more of that.
We need more of that because we see that with guys on TV all the time.
They don't give a shit, right?
No.
And also, I think it's just like normalizing eating, right? Normalizing our bodies, normalizing. And I love the fact that you said like she's just a normal woman, like because that's what most of us are.
We are
right?
just not. I mean, everyone's a normal woman, but also we've hit on this too. Some people's genetic set point is just
different.
Is at a certain weight, or they have just cheekbones like that, or whatever, and like so. Yeah, we need to like really open our eyes and see more people, because I feel like we fixate on just these like people who are just genetic anomalies sometimes.
100%.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. We didn't really get into that, but you're absolutely right. Especially within the fitness world, like so many people who are like coaches and trainers are also people who have like a lot of great genetics, right? So I was at this event and there was like a women's panel. One of the speakers was like a fitness director at Shape, and she like very honestly said like, my body is just like this. She's like, I don't even work out. Like I've gone months without working out. And
right.
On my body, right? But she looks right. She looks like she's in great. I'm doing air quotes right now. She looks like she's in great shape, or what we like in our minds, because we're conditioned to believe that what that means.
Yeah.
She has a body that she can just maintain very easily without, you know, going to the gym that regularly or being very cautious about what she eats. So again, I think that's a big part of the conversation too, right? That we recognize even the privilege, and I don't even want to say privilege, because again, that goes back to the idea that like our bodies are supposed to look a certain way. But even the idea that like, you know, what eating for one person looks like versus another person, our bodies aren't going to look the same. Also because they weren't meant to look the same.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, we could like, I feel like talk about this forever.
Yeah.
But I will say personally, having said all of this, it's a constant like dialogue in my head, right?
Same.
And so while I am so cognizant of these things and I can speak so passionately about them, you know, again, like you said, like there are mornings I wake up, or not even mornings, days, weeks, whatever, where I'm just like convinced I need to fix this body of mine or change something about it. Or I look at some people and I'm like, wow, I wish I looked like her, you know? And so it just knowing that like this is a constant thing we're working on. It's a relationship. That's why we said it's a relationship, and relationships are constantly evolving.
Always.
Right?
And they need care. So it's this ongoing care for that relationship.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So that was our body stuff.
That was the body
which
stuff.
like I feel like we could have part 2, part 3, part 4.
I could go on forever.
We'll see.
Yeah.
But we do have asking for a friend.
Asking for a friend.
And asking for a friend this week, and I think it's a great question for Chrissy to actually really get into, which is someone is they have a job, but they also have a side hustle. Yeah. And they're really unhappy with their job, but they're terrified of, you know, going all into their side hustle. Yeah. So what advice would you give to this person? Oh my God. Is this person me? No, I'm just kidding. So that was me for a long time, actually. I had a side hustle doing like fitness related stuff, and had a corporate job where I was making really good money, actually, and did like very well at that job, but I was miserable, and I got like more miserable towards the end. And I won't say I hated it, but definitely wasn't what I wanted to be spending my days doing. And I was definitely more excited about what I was doing on the side. Right. But it's like a big jump to make, right? So I think there's a couple things to consider. Number one, like, how long have you been doing your side hustle? I think sometimes people like want to jump into the side hustle right away because it's exciting and it's fun, it's all this stuff. But like, you know, as well, like building a business is fun, but it's also really challenging. It's also really, you know, it's up and down. It's not always just like so much fun. Like it's fun. It's always fun, but there's like a lot to it, right? Yes. So my advice is to take your time. And I know that like your job could be like really miserable, and I get it. I've been there, but I think it's really important that you don't throw yourself into the side hustle full time before you're ready, because then it becomes really stressful, right? Yeah. And you're like, I need to make money, I need to do this, and then your side hustle all of a sudden is like a disaster, or you're feeling really stressed about it, and not, instead of having energy of like, I just really love doing this. So be patient and build your side hustle with time. And also, like, I will just be really honest that like there was like a 2-year period where I was just really, really busy, right? And that required like not going out as much sometimes. It required like less sleep. And it required... You would be up until like all hours of the morning. I was up all the time. Like she would do her full-time job, get home at like 6, 7, and then go start coaching. Do all my stuff at night. Like, and I really, like, in hindsight, I don't even know how I did it for so long, because there'd be like, consistently I slept for like 4 or 5 hours. Oh my God. Right? And like, sometimes you go to the gym in the morning. Oh no. And then I get up at, like, listen, I had a whole thing. It was a whole thing. And, but it was just like, I think at that time I was like, this is just what I need to do for now. So I just like, this is it. And I was really tired. I was really exhausted. But when I made the jump, I felt really comfortable with it, because I knew that I had grown my business where it needed to be. I had some money saved so that I wouldn't freak out. And I think for me also too, it was always a thought that like, if I need to ever go back to a job, I know I can go back to a job, but I wouldn't recommend like quitting your job and just jumping into your full, before you've established some clients or established a little bit of like a base, because it's just too challenging, and then you stress yourself out. And again, like when you're doing a passion project on the side, your side hustle, like you want it to continue being something that you love, not something that you end up like hating because you're like, I need money, and you're stressed about it. So I say stick it out with the job a little bit longer, and, you know, do whatever you can. So for me, a big thing was like, when I left work, I left it at work, right? I was really cognizant to turn that off. So it's like, I go to work, I do my job fully, and then I'm done with it. Like, I'm not gonna think about it at home. I'm not gonna think about it on the weekends. It's just what I have to do right now because I was paying my bills. And that was important for the time. So I love all that advice. Everything Chrissy said, I completely agree with. Especially that piece on, you know, your passion, your side hustle can easily become the thing you hate if you kind of don't ease into it mindfully, intentionally, and slowly. You know, it's funny because I think a lot of the times our side hustles are the things that we love doing, which is great, but then you don't realize, oh, like it's the thing I love doing, and now it's my source of income, and now I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a business person, right? And so those are very different things. And so even in the best of moments, I'm sure me and you have moments where we're like, what the heck am I doing? Of course. You know, and it's really overwhelming. And we did this kind of slowly and intentionally. Another piece I would love to add is that, you know, I think we live in a society where we're kind of told that we should be pursuing our side hustle or pursuing our passion, and that if we're not, that we're not living a fulfilled, optimal, whole life.
It's so big.
And I think that's kind of a lie. It's a total lie. And I think it makes some of us feel really ashamed
to just have like a 9 to 5.
To have a 9 to 5. And it makes, even if your 9 to 5 isn't your ideal job, it makes you feel even worse there, because like, you're like, oh man, like, look at all these people
living their best
life, right? And so I think it's like not to get swept up in that as well. I've always said there's like 3 types of jobs. The first job is the job you hate and you're not good at. Nobody should do that. But there's 2 other jobs, and I think in our society we really glamorize the passion job, like the job that's your passion. But like we said, that job can wear you out, run you out, burn you out, and then you're left without your passion, right? Like you're no passion. And it's still a struggle. Like it's no dream on this other side. And the third job that I think is like we kind of overlook and we think, oh, well, I don't know, is like the job that you like or you're good at, but that gives you the time, the benefits, the money to explore whatever your passion is, right? You know, if your job is giving you lots of time off so you can travel, that's amazing, right? If your job is really cool with you, like going to conferences or, you know, taking a day off so you can go to that audition, that is amazing, right? And so we also need to like not kind of scoff at those things. Those are actually 100%. really wonderful jobs. So I think that's also another thing, like just see and check in if you're not like packing on a little bit more shame and anger because like, I should be living my passion and I should be in that, and like that's the fulfilling life. So yeah.
And I think the other thing too is that I think especially in like Instagram world, we really glamorize the passion projects, right? Because behind the scenes, let me just tell you, it is not like every day is like, oh my God, this is just so much fun. It's like doing tedious things that I don't really like. That's not the fun part of it, but you still have to do it, right? Which goes back to that like entrepreneur piece. It is not all like fun and games. Like, and again, they see the good parts, but like most days I'm like in some clothes I like slept in on my computer working by myself, right?
Yes.
So it's not like this beautiful, like, I mean, it's beautiful, but it's not like, you know, we're just like walking around like doing like fancy stuff all the time. It's still work. It very much is. It's just a different form. So
I think like the big takeaways are like, take your time. I love that. And there's no shame in having a 9 to 5.
It's a beautiful thing to have.
Yeah.
So that's our show today. Our first recording together.
Yes.
How did it feel?
This felt kind of like, for those of you who are listening, it probably was not any different. But if you're watching, this kind of felt cool. It was like a little coffee talk. It was the coffee couch. Yeah. And then when it's fall, it's going to be sweater weather.
Oh my God, absolutely.
And we get to wear sweaters. Maybe then we'll have our tea.
Our coffee? Well, you have tea. I'm going to have coffee.
He's going to have coffee.
But that sounds lovely.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us. And tune in next week.
Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of TGTS. If you like today's episode, please subscribe, review, or leave a comment for us. And please share the TGTS love. Until next week, bye.